Elements in the death of Friends actor Matthew Perry, a California doctor and a drug dealer known as the Ketamine Queen, have been charged in connection with the overdose death of Perry. This is according to a superseding indictment that was unsealed today. According to the 18-count indictment, Jasveen Sangha, a North Hollywood resident who sold ketamine and other drugs, provided Perry's assistant with the ketamine that ultimately led to the actor's death. Now, the assistant, Kenneth Iwamasa, injected Perry with the drug on the day he died. That's according to the indictment. The syringe was provided by Salvador Palencia, a doctor who had also given ketamine to Perry and his assistant in the past.
Matthew Perry's journey began with unscrupulous doctors who abused their position of trust because they saw him as a payday. And it ended with street dealers who sold him ketamine in unmarked vials. The desperation that led Perry to these individuals was not met with help, as it should have been from the doctors.
The indictment does list several co-conspirators, but again, only 2 people have been charged at this time.